Business Connections Live, the UK's leading online business channel. This is Business Connections Live with Steve Hyland.
Hello there and welcome to Business Connections Live, the program for entrepreneurs, SMEs and business owners. Now, on today's show, we're going to be talking about how the EU referendum may affect your business. Regardless of how big or small your business is, what kind of effect could it have on you? If we were to stay in, are there going to be advantages? If we were to leave the EU, would there be advantages or disadvantages? My guest on today's show is Stephen Altmann-Richer. He's the head of Group Confederation of British Industry, better known to you and I as the CBI. Stephen, terrific to have you with us today. Thank you very much for joining us on Business Connections Live.
Thank you, Steve.
CBI, now, I tend to ask this question at the beginning of a lot of programmes. For those people that don't know who the CBI are and who they represent, who are the CBI?
So the CBI is the UK's leading business group. We represent around 190,000 businesses, and we do that both directly through individual businesses that join the CBI and also through 140 trade associations that the CBI speaks for. Our members represent around 7 million employees, which is about a third of the private sector workforce.
Crikey, it's very, very big, isn't it? A lot of people, when they hear about the CBI, I think they assume that the CBI is all about big businesses, about multinational blue chip companies. And I suppose what we all do in our mind's eye, we put people in the different pigeonholes. So the CBI is big business, maybe the chamber is medium-sized business, you got the FSB, they're different, same kind of thing as the chamber. But CBI predominantly is seen as the representative of big corporations. Do you think that's a true assessment?
I don't think that's a true assessment. I think the CBI speaks for a broad range of businesses. So yes, we have large companies in membership, but actually we represent many small and medium-sized companies, and we know that small and medium-sized companies are absolutely vital for the UK economy, and hopefully we can get into some of that today during the programme.
Now, what's your role within the CBI? What's your job?
So my job at the CBI is I head up our team on the EU referendum. So I've been at the CBI for about 5 years in total.
Me.
Yeah, rather you than me. I've been at the CBI for about 5 years in total, and I've been doing this role for just over 2 years. It's obviously become a pretty high-profile role since the election and since we knew for sure that there was going to be a referendum.
Is there a lot of confusion out there, do you think? And are we making it any easier? Are our politicians and our representative bodies, are they making it any easier, do you think?
Look, we hear from a lot of our members that there is a need for more information. I mean, just a good example is the FSB did a survey of small businesses recently, and one of the things that came across very strongly in that survey was that small businesses in particular feel like they need more information to help them make a decision. I think groups like the CBI are helping to provide that information, but there's clearly quite a lot of bluster on all sides at the moment in this debate. Lots of sort of claims and counterclaims, and hopefully we can cut through some of that today.
Do you think there is a lot of navel gazing going on? Have we all got our crystal balls out? Should we be really having Crystal Meg, or whatever her name was, from the old
Mystic
lottery,
Meg.
yeah, from the old days, sitting there looking into a crystal ball and telling us what the future may hold? Does anybody really know, or is it all best guess?
Well, I think one of the nature of this debate is that there's one side remaining in where, yes, there is some uncertainty about the future direction of the Eurozone, what might exactly happen. So there is some uncertainty, but we sort of know what that future holds because we're kind of in it at the moment. And there's the other side where it's quite difficult to say. There are lots of kind of I guess known unknowns and possibly unknown unknowns on that side as well. So it is difficult to know exactly what would happen especially if we left. But there are a number of there are a number of different options that maybe that other countries have done, which might give some indication. But yes, it is uncertain, I think.
As an organisation, the CBI, have you taken a stand? Have you put your stake into the sand and said, right, this is what we believe that's going to be best for new businesses? And if you have done that, how have you come to that decision?
So, I mean, on all issues, but on an issue, especially an issue as big as this, we're consulting all our members all the time. So the first big consultation we did on this was back just after the Prime Minister did his now very famous Bloomberg speech back in January 2013, where he first said there would be a referendum if he got re-elected as Prime Minister in May, which is obviously now happened.
Do you think he regrets that day? Do you think ever?
I wouldn't like to speak for him. I'm not sure, but no, I think that's been quite clearly the government's policy. But yeah, after that speech happened, we embarked on the biggest consultation process the CBI has ever done with its members. We have to bore people, but the way that the CBI is structured is we have a sort of business parliament, which is made up of a number of regional councils and sort of policy committees, which is where people are elected onto those regional councils and represent kind of businesses in that region. And that's where we use that kind of business parliament to devise our policy. So we consulted that business parliament after the Prime Minister's Bloomberg speech. We also did a survey of all CBI members to make sure we were capturing everyone within that family. And what that consultation told us was that the majority, but not all CBI members, wanted to remain in a reformed EU. And that reformed EU is very important, because what it said was that most of our members said that they do benefit currently from being in the EU, but also that the EU was far from perfect and they wanted to see it reformed to work better for business.
Isn't that the issue that we've got at the moment? And it's that word, reform, is the thing that carries the weight, isn't it? That's the thing where there is a multitude of sins taking place. The Prime Minister, he's been to Brussels, he's done his negotiations, and really, has he come back with a bag full of goodies, or has he come back with a bag that is truly, in this case, half empty? Because he didn't really get what he wanted, and we still feel that we are playing the tune as dictated by the people in Brussels. I mean, did he come back with everything that we needed, and do small business feel that they've got enough out of the reforms that he come back with?
Look, we've done a lot of quite detailed assessment of the reforms, and the CBI had a reform agenda that we were calling for, which was designed to both influence what's going on in Brussels, but also the Prime Minister's process. And having sort of assessed the outcome, we think that on balance, it's a good deal for business. And I think
give an example of what's a good deal for business.
Yeah, so I think if you're thinking about small businesses, one of the things that the CBI has been calling for a number of years now is for the EU to set specific targets to reduce the burden of regulation. And for the first time, the Prime Minister has achieved that in his negotiations. He's got agreement from the other European leaders of the EU.
This is an organisation that hasn't been able to ratify its books for years, hasn't it? So should we believe, should we trust, or will it be just regulation after regulation?
So, I mean, we think this will make a tangible difference, and we think actually there are some signs of progress. Look, we know that the EU needs to do much more to reduce the burden of regulation, but there have been some good signs of progress. So, for example, in the last 2 years, at the start of every year, the European Commission sets out an annual work plan, sort of everything it's planning to do each year. The last 2 years, that annual work programme has only included 23 new initiatives that the Commission is planning to do. Now, that 23 might be 23 too many for some
Probably.
people, but but the average before that was over 100 per year. So actually, that's a pretty marked step change. Now, what we need to see is these signs of progress really be cemented and start coming through into kind of the legislation that's coming from Brussels. Now, we need to see that kind of cemented, and what the Prime Minister has negotiated in terms of these targets should help to build upon that and really ingrain it.
Do the CBI feel that a lot of this is going in one direction, though? It's very much a case of that we're the delinquent that is thinking about leaving home, when in fact home would like us to stay. We hear very much about how we would be penalised if we were to leave, if we were to exit the EU. But surely us leaving would have very, very damaging consequences. It could be the beginning of the domino effect right across the EU zone, with other countries realising that the benefits of being out outweigh being in.
Look, I think it's quite clear that our European friends want the UK to stay in the EU.
But do they want us to stay in enough?
Well, that's the question. I mean, I've been to a number of countries around the EU. So one of the things that the CBI has been doing is trying to build a business consensus for a reformed EU right across Europe. We have sister bodies in all the other European member states.
And what do they say?
We've been out there to visit them, and they are all really keen for the UK to stay in. And one of the reasons that they're keen for the UK to stay in is that they find the UK actually is very much a kind of liberalising and sensible force within Europe, helping to make the EU rules designed in a way that works better for business. So actually economically, the UK, as well as the kind of weight that we have as the world's fifth largest economy, also is a kind of force for liberalisation in Europe. And you can see that in the way that the UK has influenced quite a number of
So should
EU
we
rules.
be not driving the legislation within the EU and not leaving it to the people who are obviously, by their own admission, aren't particularly good at it?
So I think we are driving quite a lot of the legislation within the EU. I think the UK is an influential member state within the EU. I think you can see that in areas like financial services legislation, and actually the UK being the driving force behind the creation of the single market, which our members tell us is the biggest benefit they get from being in the EU.
Listen, we'll come back. We'll talk a little bit more about it. It really is quite an interesting thing. It's one heck of a debate that's going on at the moment, and that is the issue is that we've got people like the CBI. You may have read over the past couple of weeks, of course, that the British Chambers of Commerce have had their kind of problems with their chairman, of course, having to step down after the comments that he made. They were remaining neutral. He made a decision it would be better for the UK to leave. So who do you actually believe? And that really is the issue. Or is there safe ground between the two particular standpoints? Is there something that is worth staying part of? We'll talk a little bit more with our guest on today's show, Stephen Altmann-Richer. He's the head of group from the Confederation of British Industry, better known to you and I as the CBI. You're watching Business Connections Live. Great to have your company, and great to have Stephen with us as well. And thank you very much to all the team at the CBI. We were up at an event at the CBI the other week, and it was really interesting because once again you are getting different opinions and you're getting different perspectives from the members that are there. And I think what is good about the CBI, that they're not ramming it down your throat, is it? It's here's our stance, here's what our members think, here's our recommendation. But if you disagree with that recommendation, you're not taken to the door and thrown out, are you? You're allowed to have a free voice.
Very much so. And look, the CBI isn't here to tell people how to vote. The CBI is here to represent the view of our members, but also those members that don't agree with that majority view. They very much speak up. We know this is a debate with high passions, and we respect them and listen to them. So it's very much a debate.
If you're enjoying today's show, it's great to have you with us as always. And a lot of people have been coming to us and sort of saying, the kind of things that we do here on the air are always really quite fascinating. And also the techniques that people use. Stephen, of course, is an old hand at coming into radio and TV studios and actually putting his case across. But if you were in a situation where you had to put your business case across, if you had to promote and deliver maybe a video on your particular business, could you do it? Do you have the necessary skills? If you were confronted by a reporter or somebody that is in the news media, would you be able to handle the media? It's a question you've got to ask yourself. And I think a lot of business owners just aren't well equipped for that. Having worked with a number of large blue chip companies that really aren't in the position to actually handle the media in the most professional way. What you need, if that is the case, you need a little bit of training. We offer that here at Business Connections Live. We'll bring you into the studio and we'll put you through the ramifications of sitting down in a studio and going through a head-to-head interview. Maybe not as polite as I am today. I can be quite cutting. It's not just a nice face, To give you the kind of feedback that we've had after one of our courses, have a look at this.
I'm James Griffin from Iris Software, and my team have just completed the How to Handle the Media workshop. It was a really great course, it was really fun, and it was a really unique way for them to polish their presentation skills and learn how to answer difficult questions under pressure. So I'd highly recommend this to anybody that values those skills and really wants a great day out with their team.
Absolutely fantastic. James there, our thanks to him for giving us that endorsement, and terrific to know that he actually got real benefit for his team and for himself as well. Now, if you like more details about how you can do one of our media or how to handle the media training courses, you can get all the information simply by going to our website. I'll give you all the details right now. You can email us here at studio@businessconnectionslive.com, or if you want, you can give us a call and have a chat about it. We like picking the phone up and chatting to people. The telephone number is 01784 256 777. If you want to follow the stream of consciousness that is Business Connections Live, then all you've got to do is follow BCL Business TV. But if you are looking for a course on how to handle the media, it's just one of the many courses that we do, but if you are looking at finding a course that will teach you how to handle both face-to-face interviews and also radio interviews, they're very, very different. TV is one thing, radio is something else. Radio, very, very intimate medium where perhaps you could be talking, in fact, to the listener, just whispering to them and getting your point across. If you want to go through the experience of doing that, it really is a fascinating day. Get in touch with us here at Business Connections Live. You're watching Business Connections Live. My guest on today's show is Altmann-Richer. He's head of group from the Confederation of British Industry, that's the CBI. Today we're talking about the EU referendum and what it could mean to you as a small business. Earlier on we were talking about a lot of people see the CBI as being representatives of large multinationals and blue chip companies. So the big organisations, and you say to me that of course that you are interested in small to medium scale enterprises as well, but a lot of small SMEs, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, a small workforce that is here in the UK, a significant part of the working population, probably don't feel that they're represented by anybody in particular, and maybe they would say that an exit from the EU probably won't affect them at all. What would you say to them? I mean, a company like ours, would it affect us if we're not exporting goods but providing services?
So I think the very important thing is to think about the different factors that might be affected by this decision, and then to work from there to see whether it might affect a particular business. That's probably the right way around to do it, because I don't think it's just those businesses that export to the EU that will be affected. So we know that we operate in a business system with very much interconnected supply chains, complex linkages between different firms. We also have to think about whether there would be an impact on the wider economic environment and whether that might affect a particular business.
Would it be fair to say, though, that the impact could be positive?
Look, no one knows what would happen ultimately.
So it's fair to say that it could be a positive impact. So we could be sitting here having a conversation that says, if the UK leaves the EU, we could be in a more positive and a better position for businesses in the UK, and small to medium scale enterprises could actually benefit from it. And the reason I'm saying that is there doesn't seem to be that balance in the conversation at the moment.
So, I mean, our research and the evidence would suggest that that is unlikely. Highly unlikely. One doesn't know what would happen, so one can't entirely rule that out. But our evidence and research would say that that's highly unlikely.
What are the key things from the evidence and research then?
So the key things are, for example, access to the EU single market, which is the biggest benefit that business say they get.
Let's look at that first of all. So access to the EU market. We're the fifth largest economy in the world. Surely people will be hungry to be dealing and trading with us. It can't be all one way, can it? So you've got 70 odd million people, 68 million people in the UK. That's a big customer base. Surely Europe would want to trade with that size of customer base.
Yes, and I think Europe would want to trade with that size of customer base, and I think we would continue trading with Europe. No one suggesting that trade would cease. The key question is the terms on which that trade is happening. So but it's not going that way all the time. I'm thinking, if I'm Mr. BMW and I want to sell cars to a large marketplace, I'm not going to shut my doors and say, I'm afraid if you live in the UK, we're going to make it more difficult for you to buy my cars.
I'm going to want. I'm looking at it the other way. See, I want to trade with the UK. So regardless of what happens, whether the UK is in the EU or not, I'm still going to want to trade. So it's in my interest as Mr. BMW to be trading with a very, very large marketplace. And because we always seem to talk about the fact the way it's going to affect us here trading with them there. What about them there and how they'll be trading with us here? That's the way around that sometimes we seem to forget.
Well, yes, I mean, BMW is an interesting example that you picked
Yes.
there, because they've actually just written to all their employees saying that, you know, of course, business and trade would continue, but they would value remaining in the EU because they think that would be better for their business. So this is sort of, you know, if we left the EU, of course the UK could survive. We're the 5th largest economy.
Absolutely.
There's some fantastic strengths about the UK.
So
the question is, how would we prosper the most? That's the question.
But isn't it naive of an organisation like BMW to even turn around and to actually say that in a conversation to their employees? It is a veiled threat, isn't it? I know you can't talk for BMW.
No, I
appreciate
obviously
that,
can't talk for BMW. What I can talk about is the importance of providing information and facts in this debate for people to be able to make an informed decision. One of those things is, what does your employer think about this decision? It might be the same with a small business. Might think, well, you know, this might not affect me, but one of the things that is really important is that a small business is also thinking about, well, how's this going to affect my big customers or my major suppliers? You know, how's this going to affect them? You know, the economy is very interconnected, so how it affects these other people and organisations that one interacts with is also a very important question.
But dare I say, sir, that depending where you're sitting on the fence, if you are listening to the likes of Boris Johnson, he will say the way it will affect the businesses and the way it will affect you as a supplier to these large businesses, it will affect you for the positive. And if you are listening to the likes, if we're listening to the Prime Minister, to David Cameron, and to the CBI in this particular instance, you will be saying that it will affect you in a negative way. And the problem is that we do not know. We just do not know. Who do you follow? You know, if Boris Johnson, if the vote is for us to leave the EU, Boris Johnson could well be the next Prime Minister. And he's already talking about the fact that it's going to be sovereignty that we're going to maintain. Our trading relationship with Europe is going to be just as viable because we're such a large economy to actually trade with. And that's the confusion that common man. I'm but a simple bloke, and that's the confusion of the messages that are coming out at the moment. I see what the letter that we talked about from that manufacturer that we mentioned a moment ago has been a veiled threat, but they're no more in the know than anybody else is. But it's probably in their interest to remain for us to remain in the EU.
Yeah, look, all we can do at the CBI is represent the view of our members, and we represent the view of the majority, and the majority of our members have consistently told us that they think they'd be better off remaining in a reformed EU. It's worth noting that on the back of the Prime Minister's reform negotiations, we're in the process at the moment of consulting our members again about what we should say on the question of the referendum specifically. So up until now, we've been saying the UK, most of our members want the UK to remain in a reformed EU. Well, we kind of now know what the reforms look like for the purposes of this referendum. Of course, reform is a process, not an event, and must continue. But we're now consulting on the basis of that deal, asking our members, you know, what do they think now, and have any of their views changed since what we've been talking to them about for the last couple of years.
Do the CBI think that he got enough then for SMEs? Did he get enough reforms for it to be beneficial for the small to medium scale enterprise?
So he got some things that are very good for SMEs, and that are, you know, he got overall a good deal for business.
Like what?
Like the burden regulation target that I mentioned before. Mm-hmm. That's a really important example. He also got a clear commitment from other leaders to improve the EU single market, and for the EU to sign more trade deals with other countries like the US and Japan. That's really important. The other thing he did, and actually something that our members often have told us they were quite nervous about, is this issue of further integration in the Eurozone, and whether that could discriminate against the UK not being in that Eurozone. And the Prime Minister, I think, has secured some really important safeguards to make sure that the UK can't be discriminated against because we're keeping the pound, because we're not part of that Eurozone. But just one more point, of course, reform must continue. I mean, from the CBI's perspective, the business environment can always be improved, and we will continue to fight for that to happen. Should the UK vote to stay in the EU, of course, reform must continue, and more and more reforms are needed.
Do you think the EU is running absolutely terrified that if we were to pull out of it, it would be the beginning of it all falling over? We've got real problems. I do understand the CBI is representing what their members are saying. I do understand that, but when you sit down in the cold light today, you look at it. We've got the migrant crisis which is taking place. We've got Greece, which is still in turmoil, which the migrant crisis is compounding and making it even worse. We're seeing that now spreading up through Europe itself. We're seeing really a bit of a step back from the German Chancellor as well when it comes to immigration. That really, we'd like to think that we have control over all the United States of Europe, but in fact we don't. And everybody, when the going gets tough, everybody is doing it for themselves, as a well-known pop song once said. So don't you feel that's actually happening within the community, and we could be seeing something that we don't want to be part of because it isn't as powerful and strong as it likes to think it is?
Look, that's a very good question. The only thing I'd say in response
Are we about
to
to
that,
park this?
Well, one thing I'd say in response to that, without going too far outside the sort of CBI's remit to talk about the sort of the business implications, is that we need to think about how we're best able to solve these problems, and whether these are big challenges. The EU is facing big fundamental challenges at the moment, one of which is the UK's future in it, but you've identified another one with the migration crisis. You've still got issues in the Eurozone, etc. Are those challenges going to go away or be easier to solve whether we're in or out of the EU? I think that's quite an interesting question for people to ponder. I mean,
on a human level, what we were going to do, I mean, we would probably support anything that was done to help the migrants anyway. Even though I suppose we may be perceived as being hesitant at going 100% at it, but we are making an offering into the EU on that. What else then from the negotiations, the reforms that he came back with? The other one was the integration, the further integration. Are these legally binding, these particular ones, or are they just gentlemen's agreements at present?
So we think they are legally binding, in the sense that it's a decision of the European Council, and in order for that decision to be undone, the UK would need to agree for the decision to be undone. It's a deal that's been deposited at the United Nations, and it will be incorporated into the EU's treaties next time they're changed. So from our side of things, we think it's a strong binding deal.
I don't know about you. It is a very confusing area to actually find yourselves in, and I think you can see that the CBI have come down on the side of industry. They've talked to their members, and of course, what the CBI is saying is our members feel at the moment that leading up to the EU referendum, the best place to be for the UK and for UK business is to be inside of it. We'll talk a little bit more about it in just a few moments' time, but I hope you're finding today's program. My guest on today's show is Stephen Altmann-Richer. He's going to hit me in just a moment. He's the head of Group Confederation of British Industry for the CBI. More in just a moment. It really is very, very difficult. I hope you don't mind. I mean, it can become very confrontational very quickly, can't it? Because I think people have got a real passion for this whole topic, and depending on what day of the week it is and who you're talking to and what newspapers they read, people will have very differing views on whether it's good or bad, won't they?
Yeah, look, we know this is a passionate subject. There are strong views on both sides. What we're trying to do is represent the views of our members to try and help that business view to come through and just be out there to inform people. We know there are a number of issues on which people base their decision in this debate, but what the implications could be for the UK's prosperity is one important one, and that's where we're hoping that we're providing some useful information for people.
Well, we're going to come back in just a few moments' time. We're going to talk a little bit about what does influence people to actually go about making their decisions, so that's still to come. Listen, we hope you're enjoying today's programme. Don't forget you can catch up on all the programmes that we've done for small to medium scale businesses. They're all sitting there online. There's nearly 200 hours worth of content from all sorts of different business experts, everybody from the CBI down to the, well, up to and around to independent experts on the likes of social media, seed funding, everything that you as a small business needs to know. It's great free advice and it's online. If you want to find out more about it, then simply go to our website at businessconnectionslive.com. Last week was a really fascinating show. We had Jason Downs. He's the Managing Director and VP of Powwow Now. You may have heard about them. They're the conference company. Instead of maybe travelling miles each and every day, you can sit down in front of your laptop and you can actually have an intelligent, proper conversation with a group of people as if you were having one particular meeting. He thinks that the future is going to be very bright for the kind of technology that Powwow Now are introducing to businesses up and down the UK. If you haven't seen the programme yet, I do suggest you do. It's an interesting show. Jason Downs, Managing Director of Powwow Now, the conference call service providers, and we discussed outdated work practices and the future of the office. Have a look at this. Now, on today's show, we're going to be looking at our outdated work practices and the future of the office. My guest on today's show is Jason Downs. He's the Managing Director of a company I'm sure you've heard of, Powwow Now.
And what Powwow Now does, it's Europe's fastest growing conference call company. Well, I think often in Britain we do a lot of the right things but maybe don't go quite quick enough. But now it's software driven. There's services like iMeet by Powwow Now, and you can actually have some great meetings. You can see people, you can hear people, share files, chat. So you do not have to be restricted in the same ways you used to be. Remote work meetings are great, but you do sometimes need to have that face-to-face. So don't expect it to replace every single one of your meetings, every single thing in your organisation. It's about that balance. It's why are we expecting everybody to get in for 9 o'clock on a Monday morning? All we get is grumpy people. There's no tools out there that are suddenly going to be your secret success, that if only I do this, I'm suddenly going to be incredibly successful. It still comes down to, have I got a good product and a good service? Do I listen to my customers? And do I follow through on what I said I was going to do? I think literally many companies are there already in terms of what they've actually set up, and I think those role model entrepreneurs who are, a lot of them are driving the growth of Britain. It will be those types of companies that will emerge and just get bigger and stronger. So what would I see those businesses look like when I look at some of our customers, how they work? They have smaller office space. They might actually be spending the same amount of money, but what they've actually done is got the best location to attract talent or to be with their customers. So actually, I think you may bizarrely find that the cost per square feet is still high, but actually they've decided, I've got 100 people or I've got 20 people, but I'll only seat a third of them. I think it's all about mindset, and it's all about the leadership and the culture of the business. I don't think the size, the industry or anything has anything to do with it, in my opinion. It's about having the mindset and the trust in people, that you can have more flexibility because I trust you, and making sure you equip your people and your business with the right technology. You don't have to have physical touch to be communicated with. And if you think, if I can see you, if I can share my information with you, why can't I do that? And I look at, again, young people who have grown up now with multiple chat systems on their phone or on their tablet, multiple video systems where they chat and just communicate with their friends to arrange meetups. They're expecting that in the workplace. Because actually, if we want to find out all the details, so I can just talk through one example of a recruitment firm we use, and when they talk about how they work, recruitment business historically in London wanted to expand into Manchester and to Paris, was worried about how they keep eyes on them, used one of our technologies called iMeet, and what they do when they review the pipelines, so the prospecting, all that information, be it from LinkedIn or wherever we've got it, and then into Salesforce or whatever system they're using, by being able to have those one-to-one video reviews. So we'd just be having a normal review that we could be doing in an office, or actually, well, why do I want to go to Paris every week for that and waste that time? We're doing the same meeting, we can see each other, we can share the screen, so I can see your Salesforce screen because I can share. I can send you some files and we can share some files, and all the technology's there, very low cost, very affordable for SMEs, and suddenly you're now running a business that has got multi-locations right for your target customer base, and actually you are as engaged and connected to those people, be it in Paris or if you're in together in your same office in Richmond. Hi, I'm Jason Downs, the Managing Director from Powwow Now. We're Europe's fastest growing conference call provider. What we've talked about today is really just helping your business and you as an individual become more flexible by using all the tools that are out there today, be that anything as simple as an audio conference call that always works and gives you absolutely clear audio, or be it a more engaging video conference where you're wanting to share some files and share your screens. But it's also been able to do what's right for you and right for your employees and right for your customers. So please, all I've shared is what's worked for a number of our customers and also what's worked very successfully for Power Now. But it won't work for everybody, and it's important that you do what's right for your business at the right time. And I just applaud all the entrepreneurs out there too who are growing their business far quicker than some of the stuffy corporates that are still working to 9 till 5, are still doing command and control, and are not allowing people to express themselves in the way we should be in this day and age.
Jason Downs there from Power Now, Managing Director and VP. And if you want to watch the entire programme, just go to the website businessconnectionslive.com. My guest on today's show is Stephen Altmann-Richer. He's Head of Group, Confederation of British Industry, the CBI. Of course, today we're talking about the EU referendum. I shall now throw a spanner in the works. There's a whole load of documentation that the CBI have actually published that you can see here. We've got the EU referendum. There's a whole pack, in fact, member information pack, which this is February 2016. I would imagine that's constantly been updated and rewritten and probably downloadable from the website as well. Is that right, Steve?
So that information pack is actually a benefit that we give to our members.
Right.
But should anyone watching wish to become a CBI member, or would like to talk about that, please get in touch and we can help you and provide you with some of that information.
Okie dokie. Let's just have a quick look at the CBI website and see currently what the current buzz on the website is, shall we? What challenges you drives us, our influence, insight and access can benefit your business. The CBI is the UK's premier business organisation, providing a voice for firms at a regional, national and international level to policymakers. Our mission, a thriving UK economy that's good for everyone. The positioning, once again, on here, we were kind of chatting about it there. Your president is making the case very strongly that, particularly here, that the EU single market is delivered for UK consumers over the years that we've been a member of it. Of course, he was talking at the Lord Mayor's show, and it does seem that the positioning both of your senior membership as well, your senior organisational, your leaders, is very much in favour. Do you think is that an independent view that would come over? Would Paul be feeling very much that is the position that we should be in, and is he pleased that the membership are in favour of staying within the EU?
So I think Paul, our president, like everyone else at the CBI, will represent the view of the majority of CBI members, and that's what he's doing. He's talking about the different futures that the UK has to choose between in this referendum, and the benefits that we get from that at the moment. If you read the full speech, what Paul also says in there is that on the basis of the Prime Minister's reform negotiations, as I mentioned earlier, we're currently consulting about what that means for tackling the referendum itself. But it's clear that up until now, CBI members have told us, the majority have told us, that the UK's better off remaining in a reformed EU.
Do you think we could end up voting not on the EU referendum as such, but the referendum could be on immigration, and that we get completely sidetracked by some clever politicians, the likes, shall we say, of Nigel Farage, who's a very good orator? He could come along and he could actually do quite a basket case, really, on the EU. You're listening to Boris as well. There's a lot of other things that are going on at the same time, and all they've got to do is sway not a significant amount of the population for all of a sudden that we get a vote to come out, but we're not really voting on the EU. We're not really voting on what it means to businesses. We're looking at migration and all those kind of things. Is that a danger that we're all up against?
Look, I was waiting till you might get onto the migration subject, Steve. Look, I think that is a danger, and as I've said before, there are a number of factors on which people will base their decision in this referendum. Immigration will be an important one, we know that. The economy will be an important one, sovereignty, security, etc. What's important is that people...
So is it jingoism that we're up against here? Could it be that, flying the national flag, we want to keep the Queen as the head of state, we want to maintain rule by looking after our own money, people who look after your money are the people that are in control of you. Is it all those things? Are we going to find ourselves in a situation there's going to be a lot of people appealing to hearts and minds?
So we know that actually, you know, for a lot of people, this is a kind of head versus heart decision. The CBI as an organisation, we're very much in that head space. So we're trying to provide sort of facts and information for what this means for the UK's prosperity. And immigration is a really interesting topic there, because actually the business experience is that overall businesses tell us that they benefit from the free movement of people within the EU. So when we last surveyed our members, only 1% said that free movement of people had been negative for business, and over half said that free movement of people had been positive for their business. So that access to skills is one of the things that underpins the single market, and is very important for business.
And yet it's the thing that worries most people in the high street will be the fact that there is these open borders and we want control back of our borders.
So we would obviously recognise that the public do have a lot of concerns about this issue, and that the experience of business here is perhaps different to the experience of the public. And that's why we've said previously as an organisation that this free movement of people, it should be freedom to work, and not freedom, for example, to claim benefits. So actually in terms of the Prime Minister's negotiations in Brussels...
But he didn't get everything he wanted though, did he?
Well, we think we'd support the fact that he's been trying to tackle this sort of perceived unfairness in the system, and that it should be a freedom to work and not a freedom to claim benefits.
Do you think we should have maybe some form of point system the same way as Australia has? See, I couldn't go. They wouldn't have me.
Well,
they'd have you, but they wouldn't have me. I'm too old, aren't I?
Look, businesses benefit from the free movement of people within the EU, but clearly there's an issue there within public support for that principle. So we'd support measures taken which would help to rebuild that support for that principle, one of which would be tackling this issue around benefits.
Yeah, but do you think a point system would be any good? Do you think that would work?
I haven't looked into what the different policy outcomes would mean, but our members tell us that they benefit from this free movement of people. It allows them to bring in skills, it allows them to kind of flex their workforces around Europe, it allows them sort of, you know, free movement of people allows them to access, you know, different skills when they need it. And you know, you talk to businesses who maybe bring in people from the EU and also people from outside the EU, and they talk about how it's so much more bureaucratic and difficult to bring in people from outside the EU.
Don't you think we'd still have a certain element? I mean, there would be negotiations, obviously, for open borders still, or some form of freedom of movement. If you're coming here and you've got, should we say, the particular documentation for a job that you're coming over, then it'd be no problem at all. You just come in. You've got a job, in you come. A friend of mine, he went to Australia. He's an old fella like I am, but he is a mortician. And they are crying out apparently in Australia. They're crying out for morticians. and before he'd even finished his holiday, he was all signed up. He got the paperwork, and off he went. Couldn't a similar system operate quite successfully, or is it a case that what we're looking at here is that we're looking at foreign workers, migrant workers who are coming over, who are just low wages, and therefore what we're doing is that we're just compounding an issue with low wages in the UK?
Look, this is a really tricky and complex question. I think were we to leave the EU, as we were talking about in the earlier part of the show, we don't know what exactly would happen. We don't know what the rules might be. We can look at some of the alternative scenarios. So if you take Norway, for example, Norway are in the European Economic Area but aren't full members of the EU. So they do have access to that single market, which business wants to make sure it retains access to. But what having access to the single market means is that they also have to comply with that free movement of people. So Norway actually have higher EU migration per capita of their population than the UK has, despite not being a member of the EU.
A little while back, we saw Ireland, God love them, they had a number of different votes, and of course what they did, they kept having referendums until they got the answer they wanted. I think they had two or three referendums to finally get the answer they want. Do you think that if the UK was to vote to come out of the EU, it would put a shot across the bows of the EU, and then what would happen is that all of a sudden all the reforms that our Prime Minister was looking for at the time, they'll be coming along going, listen, you can have whatever you want as long as you stay in, give the people another chance, another referendum, because now here's everything that you need. Do you think they might do that?
I'd be very surprised if they did that. I think. Do
you think they would just wave us goodbye?
Well, what happens is when on a vote to leave, the UK would invoke something called Article 50 of the EU. It's sort of a technical process of what happens. The UK would invoke Article 50 of the EU. On invoking that, there's a 2-year negotiation.
And is that the time when lifelines can be thrown?
And the UK leaves. No, there's no turning back from Article 50. There's a negotiation, and the UK leaves. There's no turning back. That's not part of the deal. I mean, the Prime Minister has also been very clear that kind of leaving would mean leaving. But when you look at the kind of mechanism that's in place for a country to leave, which is completely untried and untested, but that mechanism does
something
not allow.
Else we don't know.
The mechanism does not allow for someone to sort of come back in. A no vote would be a no vote. There would be a negotiation about what sort of arrangement the UK would have outside the EU, and we might want to talk about that shortly because that would be really interesting. But that would be outside of the EU, not a kind of second referendum. This idea, I don't think is I think Article 50 clearly says that the departing state would leave the EU on invoking Article 50.
Well, let's talk about what would happen if we were to leave it then. So what kind of things could be negotiated? And could that be the thing that actually allows businesses to operate in the way they're operating now, effectively with EU countries? Effectively, a treaty is what we're talking about when it comes to trade. Isn't that what the economic European community was all about when it all started way back there? It was a trading platform. It seems to become more than that now.
Well, the first thing to say is that this negotiation would be a really complicated one. And look, I'm sure the UK could get a deal, and I'm sure it could get a decent deal. The question is, would there be the same?
Everything's okay then.
Would there be the same level of benefits as what we've got now? And from a business perspective, we think that is unlikely. One has to look at the difference between a trade deal and the single market. The UK could get a trade deal like Canada is negotiating now. That's taken 8 years and it's still not in force. So
but
these things take a long time.
So they should be able to do it a bit quicker
these
this time.
These things take, well, they've done it lots of times before. We've got 50 and Canada has taken 8 years. But that's different to the single market where you've got that full access, you've got influence over the rules, you've got access for all aspects of the services part of the economy as well, which as we know is 77% of the UK economy is in services. It's not as simple these days as just sort of, you can sell your goods in there. Actually, the UK now, we have a very complex economy, 77% services, lots of different digital businesses, a really fast growing and really quite great tech sector in the UK as well. So we need to think about all of these other things. It's not a kind of binary sort of, can we sell and is there a tariff anymore? Some tariffs might return under a trade agreement, but also, equally importantly, is that access to the single market in services as well, which is really important for, I think, probably a lot of the businesses watching this show.
Hold that thought. Come back and we'll talk a little bit more. We've just got just one more segment to go, really. You're watching Business Connections Live. My guest on today's show is Stephen Altmann-Richer. He's head of Group, Confederation of British Industry at the CBI. Hope you're enjoying today's programme. It really is. You were going there. You were going. He was telling me what for. Listen, we hope, as always, you've enjoyed today's programme. Of course, we use YouTube to actually get it out there. We think YouTube as a technical platform is absolutely fantastic. But if you are trying to promote, if you're a small business and you are using YouTube as the way to deliver the videos about your business, it could be instructional, it could be promotional, it could be sales videos. If you are using that, how do you get it in front of your audience? There is an issue, I think, with YouTube, and as much as the issue is that YouTube is geared very much towards, I call them Nicky and Sammy, the Nicky and Sammy videos where Nicky is holding his breath for 30 seconds. So what YouTube's analytics are looking for, they're looking for retention, they're looking for the number of people that view it, they're kind of looking for that viral video. And sometimes I think that actually works against small businesses using YouTube to see popularity or the growth using YouTube, because if people don't watch your entire video over a period of time, the Google Analytics will slowly slowly drop off, and so you won't be a suggested video. And of course, saying that as well, if you've only got maybe 1 or 2 videos and you're using YouTube to deliver that content to your audience because you're not doing it regularly, YouTube once again also drops you down the analytics. So how do you go about combating that? Is there a way? Well, to a certain extent, yes, there is. I mean, you can start doing regular content to upload to it, but you do need tools, and there's a great tool that we use here at Business Connections Live. It just plonks into your Chrome browser, and it's called TubeBuddy. It is absolutely fabulous. Now, there's just some of the people that are using it. You see people, everybody from Pepsi through to Mountain Dew are using it, but more importantly, here are the tools that are integral to this plugin that goes into your browser. Advanced video embedding, which is very, very handy. It means you can personalize the video on your web page. You can go in and you can do annotations across all your videos. We've got about 200 videos up on YouTube at the moment. If I want to do a campaign across all 200 of them, I can, in one click, simply I can change all the annotations, all the cards on every single video, and I can do it with one click, and TubeBuddy will get onto it. Something that was taken away from YouTube was being able to publish from YouTube to Facebook, because of course Facebook now are big when it comes to actually publishing video as well, and of course Facebook are also monetizing that, and a lot of people are having a lot of success. So publish on YouTube, use one click, and then publish on Facebook as well at the same time. Now that's just your production tools. Then you've got video SEO tools, so you can actually do tag sorting, you can search rankings, all of those kind of things. Then you've got promotion tools as well, you've got research tools. This is just a one-stop shop. We'd like to thank TubeBuddy as well for their support as well, for allowing us to bring you this program for free today. So TubeBuddy, our thanks to them. It is a fantastic plugin. Just download it, stick it into your Chrome browser. It is probably the only plugin that you're going to need when it comes to YouTube. And I've just got one other thing to say, about talking about manufacturers and things like that. Creeder and Hotpoint, you've really got to get your act together with these tumble dryers. Personal thing, I've got one. Can I use it or can't I use it? If your Creeder tumble dryer bursts into flames and burns my house down, am I covered on my insurance? Just need to know. Answer that question if you would. Thank you very much indeed. You're watching Business Connections Live. My guest on today's show is Stephen Altmann-Richer, Head of Group from the Confederation of British Industry, the CBI. And they're not an organisation for the large multinationals. Well, not only for them, they are also now concentrating on SMEs, small businesses. Just very quick, what do you define as a small business? Can it be anybody from the one-man band all the way up?
I think so, yeah. I mean, look, the type of small businesses that tend to join the CBI are those that are ambitious, looking to grow quickly, looking to sort of expand and broaden their horizons. And there's lots of stuff that and lots of resources we have that can help those sort of companies.
We're rapidly approaching the end of this programme, you'll be pleased to hear. The CBI have estimated the EU membership has a benefit of approximately £3,000 per household per year. Just give us some examples, because I can't see that. £3,000. What are the key things then that really are? We're talking about hearts and minds here, aren't we? So what are the key things then that would really hit the individual, do you think, if we left?
So look, as we've said the whole time, we don't know what would happen if we left, and actually I think it's incumbent on those advocating to leave the EU to set out what it would mean if we left and how things would work. But the sort of things that we might be talking about are the return of some tariffs on products. So for example, were we to leave the EU completely and tariffs come back under the kind of WTO model.
WTO?
World Trading Organization
right, okay,
model.
Just checking.
Under that model, you're not going to catch me out that easily. There could be a say 32% tariff on imports of wine from France. That's just a small. I mean, that's just a small example.
But you did start that sentence with maybe.
Well, we don't know. We don't know because it would depend on that negotiation.
That's scaremongering, isn't it, by any other language? Don't you think? Because that's us saying there may well be a tariff on French wines coming over here. There may well be, but there may well be a tariff coming in. So that isn't that. So we stopped drinking French wine because of the tariff. we're one of the biggest customers, that's going to really damage their market, isn't it? So surely they should be going, they must want us to really stay. They're not going to impose the tariffs because it's going to damage their own business.
Well, we have to see what happens in that negotiation. So, it could be that after, say, it's taken Canada 8 years to negotiate its trade deal with the EU, and it's still not signed, but it is kind of agreed.
Yeah.
So it should be coming into force quite soon. So, what happens in that intervening 8 years? There could be quite a significant period of sort of economic dislocation while we transition to a new model. We don't know what exactly that model might look like. We know that there will be uncertainty in the intervening period. So, I see this as just sort of, we're trying to set out the sort of facts and reality of what this negotiation and process is likely to mean.
Canada, population, how many do you reckon in millions?
I don't know the exact. It's not as many as the UK, is it?
It isn't. It's half. So we're talking about, you see, it's the significance of how big this trading partner is. 35 million, 35.16 million, the latest figures when it comes to the population of Canada. I think that's 2013, in fact. So 35.16. So what does Canada have that we don't have?
So I'm sure
we have twice the number of people that can be customers for a start. Our 68 million, more than twice nearly. Mm-hmm. So we've got that. We're a big trading partner. It is in their interest for us to stay, yet they haven't succumbed at all, have they?
These negotiations are very complicated. What you need to do first, we need to disentangle the UK from the rest of the EU if we left. So remember we've been in this this economic partnership for over 40 years. Yeah. We are very, very much entwined economically. Lots of pan-European supply chains, lots of common system of rules, which we've talked about a bit already. We'd first need to disentangle that, and then we'd need to negotiate the new deal. It's going to take some time.
It's not going to disappear overnight, though, is it? 2 years to get rid of, 2 years for the negotiations if we were to leave.
Minimum of 2 years.
A minimum of 2 years before. But it's not going to disappear overnight. A lot of that is going to remain in place, isn't it? And it'll either be scaled down. Tariffs that you were suggesting, actually, we don't know. Do you think it is the time now for all organisations, that we all have a responsibility, the CBI, the Chamber of Commerce, the Federation for Small Business, everybody that is out there, to stop surmising and just to work with the facts? Because all we're doing at the moment is surmising. Is it because we can't work with just the facts? Because we just don't have any.
So we can work with the facts of what we get from being in the EU now and what being in the EU now means. So the costs and the benefits, we can work with that. The problem is, it's really difficult to try and offer facts of what might happen if we left.
Mystic Meg was the woman we needed. That was the name, wasn't it? Mystic Meg, yeah.
Because we don't know. It's really difficult. We can look at some of these other models. So I've talked a little bit about the Norway model. I've talked about Canada. You've got Switzerland, who've got a different arrangement. They've got a series of 120 bilateral agreements with the EU, which covers various aspects of the single market, but doesn't cover a crucial area in services. So you can look at some of the alternative models. I mean, I think the UK would probably end up having, as lots of people have said, that would end up having its own sort of model, but that would take time to negotiate. It's not going to happen overnight.
But the significance, you see, I can see that. And we talk about Switzerland, and I hate to be one to bring up figures. The population of London is 11 million. The population of Switzerland is 8 million. We are a significant trading customer. If somebody came along to you and said, here is a mailing list of 68 million customers, you'd go, I'll have some of that. Which is of more value, 68 million customers or 8 million customers for Switzerland? It's that scale. We are a significant trading partner that surely the EU won't want to lose.
Yes.
And they're not going to. Nobody's talking about, are the EU going to turn around and they're going to say, right, I tell you what we're going to do. We're going to put trade sanctions on the UK because there's such a big, significant part of our customer base. We'll put trade sanctions on them so they won't buy from us, and that'll teach them a lesson. Who's it going to teach the lesson to?
Which is why I've said in the end, I'm sure there will be a deal, and we will survive outside. Of course, we're a great country. We have to also just remember that we do half of our trade with the EU.
Yep.
The rest of the EU does 10% of its trade with the UK. So while we are an important market for them. We have to remember there's 68 million of us.
I know you're playing figures with me because I've been playing figures with you.
Without the UK, there'll be roughly 430 million of them. So we are important. And I'm sure there would be a deal, but we have to think about the relative, the relative scale of the UK, and then the rest of the EU.
But it is 10% across 28 countries, isn't it? Mm-hmm. It's 10%, and what we're talking about here, we're talking about one trading country of 68 million. So we're talking about 10% of 28 individual countries. So significantly, I mean, there is a real difference there. Listen, we're nearly at the end. We could go on. I mean, it has been fascinating. I don't know where you are right now. I don't know whether it's been a help or not, but it's interesting to see exactly where the CBI is standing on this. They have listened to their members, and their members have said that they think it would be of a benefit for the UK to remain strongly and firmly within the EU. And that's where they're standing, and that's what they'll be working towards, and quite rightly so. And if you listen out, do follow them on Twitter, do all of those things to get exactly the position that they stand on, so that you can make up your own mind. I think it's going to be really big influences on all organisations to make absolutely certain that there is absolute clarity in what we're saying. At the end of every show, we always invite our guests. This is nearly the pitch, I suppose. And you've been fantastic guests today, and you've taken every swing that I've given you with a pinch of salt, which has been fantastic. We always ask our guests to really the takeaways, what you want people to remember, maybe the position of CBI, what they should remember when it comes to the EU referendum, and what it could mean to their business. Camera number one is the camera that you're going to be speaking down. Please take a breath, say who you are and where you're from. The airwaves, sir, are all yours.
I'm Stephen Altmann-Richer. I'm from the CBI and I work on our EU referendum work. The CBI is the UK's leading business organisation representing around 190,000 businesses in the UK. In terms of the EU referendum, I think the most important thing for businesses is to first of all try and think about what this would mean for your business. Speak to your suppliers, speak to your customers. What would it mean for them? The economy is very interlinked. So think about what it might mean for them, because that will also impact on yourself. Then think about your business. Think about, do you currently do any trade with Europe? What sort of regulations at the moment do you abide by? Do any of them come from Europe? If so, if we left the EU, would that change? Think about investment in the UK. Think about the wider economic impacts. Think about all the different aspects of your business and how that might be affected by this major decision that the UK has to make. We know from the majority of our members that they would like to see the UK remain in a reformed EU, and the biggest benefit they get is the access to the single market of 500 million people and the associated positive effects on investment, the ability to recruit skilled staff from across the EU, and the ability to access trade deals from further around the world.
So there we are. If you want more information, you go to the CBI's website. You can find out more about what the CBI are saying and doing at the moment. You'll be interested to know that we here at Business Connections Live are also members of the CBI, and we enjoy the debate and we enjoy going along, and we see it of significant difference to our business as well. So our thanks to all the team at the CBI. As always, you can follow them on Twitter. The Twitter handle for the CBI is
at CBI Tweets.
And you've got your own Twitter handle. Do you want to give that one out?
Which is at Stephen PJAR.
There you go, at Stephen
PJAR.
PJAR. Sounds like an American radio station. So you can go there. Don't forget as well, do check out our website too if you want to see the back catalogue of great programmes that are available when it comes to small businesses. All there waiting to give you that internal advice. If you had just one last thing to say on a personal level, what do you think it would be? Which way do you think it will go? We've all looked in our crystal balls. We all see the reasons why it could go one way or the other. What do you think will be the outcome of the referendum, in or out?
I think it's really close to call, and I think it's that kind of head versus heart decision that I was talking about before, and we'll have to see which one kind of ends up trumping. I mean, you'd think that people in previous elections in the UK have been voting with their heads. So you look at the Scottish referendum, for example, which would seem to suggest in. But I would not like to be in that Mystic Meg situation of having a crystal ball. Stephen,
it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for being on the programme today. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed today's debate concerning the EU referendum. So fantastic guest of today's show, and our thanks to him. It's been absolutely really Go on, in or out?
I'm not gonna say. I'll end up looking stupid either way.
No.
So.
Either way. Okay then. So the next week's show we've got Jim McLaughlin, why digital marketing matters to your business. So that's what we're going to be talking about next week's programme coming up in the next few weeks. Dan Spicer on social media productivity tips, growth hacks, and lead generation tactics. It's what it's all about. We're just trying to get more leads out there. Are you using your LinkedIn contacts to their most? What do you do when somebody connects with you on LinkedIn? Do you just go, cheers, thank you? Or do you send them back something? Or do you then become a nuisance? And do people use LinkedIn for the right reasons these days? Or are they just using it like Facebook? Shocking. Who knows? Also coming up in the next couple of weeks, we've got Mark Pearson, Surrey County Council. Surrey Connects as well, for that matter. He's going to be joining us here on the programme. We're looking forward to having his company. Listen, if you've enjoyed today's programme, do leave a comment. If you're watching this on YouTube, thank you very much indeed. Do give us a thumbs up. What's your opinion? In or out? We will actually do a survey with all our viewers as well. We'll be sending that out. We'll feed that back to Stephen and the rest of the team at the CBI. It'd be just interesting. Small businesses. What do small businesses really think? We'll give you the opportunity to do that. But that practically wraps up today's programme. Thank you very much indeed for your company over the last hour. We do it all again next Monday at 12 noon. Till we do it then, have yourself a fantastic week, and keep reading the newspaper. There's a lot going on with the referendum. From me, Steve Holland, and the rest of the team, have a great week. Bye for now. Bye-bye.